Welcome back to The Explainer. So, this is it, the final part of our series on cognitive behavioral therapy. We've talked about the theories and the concepts, and now we're going to put it all together. We're going to see how CBT works in the real world to help someone get unstuck from a really painful pattern. Okay, so let's meet our case study, a guy we'll call John. From the outside, things look pretty good for him, but at home, it's a whole different story. He's caught in this constant loop of arguing with his wife and kids, and honestly, he just feels completely trapped. And really, this is the big question, isn't it? It's something we can all probably relate to in some part of our lives. When you're stuck in a negative feedback loop that just keeps repeating, how on earth do you get out? Well, let's see how a CBT therapist would begin to untangle this exact problem. So, when John actually sits down with his psychiatrist, the pieces start falling into place. Any little bit of feedback, even a harmless comment from his son, feels like a full-on personal attack. His immediate reaction? He gets defensive, which of course just pours fuel on the fire. And that last point on the slide, that's a huge clue. His childhood with a supercritical dad has deeply shaped how he sees the world today. Now, a good CBT therapist isn't just going to start throwing random techniques at John. Nope. The first and maybe the most crucial step is to build a blueprint, a map that shows how John's history, his thoughts, his feelings, and his actions are all connected. This map is absolutely central to the whole process. Right? And this quote really just hits the nail on the head. In CBT, this process is called case formulation. And you should think of it less like a dry diagnosis and more like a personalized roadmap. It shows you the roads that led into the problem, and more importantly, it helps you chart a new course out. So what is it really? It's basically a working hypothesis that the therapist and the client create together. It answers the question, why is this person, with their unique story, struggling with these specific issues right now? It's all about connecting the dots. For John, this means we need to lay out that exact chain reaction that ends in a family argument. And boom, here it is. This chart lays out John's cycle so perfectly. You can just see the flow, right? It kicks off with a trigger, something as simple as his wife giving some feedback. That instantly sparks an automatic thought. She thinks I'm a bad father. And it's not like he's sitting there reasoning this out. It's a gut punch, a split-second reaction. That thought creates an intense emotion, anger, shame, which then drives a behavior, like getting defensive. And that is the loop. You see that middle column, the automatic thought? That thing is the absolute engine driving this entire painful cycle. So logically, the very first place a therapist is going to go is right there. The job is to catch those lightning-fast thoughts and put them under a microscope. Now, these automatic thoughts are usually powered by something called cognitive distortions. The best way to think about these is like glitches in your mental software. They're these common, predictable bugs in our thinking that twist reality just enough to make us feel bad. They feel completely true in the moment, but they're built on faulty logic. For John, his psychiatrist immediately spots two big ones. First up, mind reading. He is absolutely convinced he knows what his wife is thinking, but does he really have any proof? And second, there's personalization. Every single comment, no matter how small, is taken as a direct judgment on him as a person. It's all about him. So what do you do about it? This is where the real work begins, with something called cognitive restructuring. Now, this is super important. The goal is not to just think happy, positive thoughts. That's not it at all. It's about looking at the evidence and finding a more balanced, a more realistic alternative. And check out the belief ratings. You can go from being 95% convinced of the painful thought to maybe only 40% believing a more neutral one. That alone is enough to turn down the emotional heat. But, okay, you might be asking, why these specific thoughts? Why does John's brain always jump to I'm a bad father or I'm incompetent? To figure that out, CBT has to dig deeper. We have to go from pulling the weeds on the surface to finding the root system underneath. And there's a really amazing tool for this called the downward arrow technique. It sounds fancy, but it's really just a series of simple, persistent questions. The therapist just keeps gently asking some version of, okay, and if that were true, what would that mean about you? So let's follow the chain for John. The therapist starts with that really hot thought. She thinks I'm a bad father. The question is, okay, let's just say for a minute that's true. What would that mean? And John might say, well, it means I've failed my family. Okay, and the therapist keeps going just one level deeper. And if you failed your family, what does that say about you? You see how the focus shifts? It's getting more personal, more about his identity. And his answer might get heavier, something like, it means I'm a failure as a man. And then one last question, to get right to the very core of the fear. What's the absolute worst part about that? About being a failure? And for John, digging this deep, he might finally hit it, that really raw nerve. It means I'm incompetent. I'm just not good enough. And there it is. That's the core belief. It's this deep-seated fundamental rule he has about himself. I am incompetent. This belief, which probably got wired in during his childhood with his critical dad, is now acting like a pair of distorted glasses, coloring everything he sees. And this is so crucial. You can't just fight the automatic thoughts. You have to challenge the core belief that's spawning them in the first place. So how do you do that? I mean, you can't just make up one day and decide not to believe something you've felt for decades, right? Well, this is where the behavioral part of cognitive behavioral therapy shines. You can't just think your way out of it, you have to act your way into a new belief. You have to run experiments. These are called behavioral experiments. And let's be clear, this isn't just go face your fears. It's much more methodical. You literally become a scientist of your own life. You take your core belief, I'm incompetent, and you treat it like a hypothesis. Then you design a real-world experiment to go out and collect data to see if it's actually true. So here's what that looks like for John. Step 1, what's the belief we're testing? If I get criticism, I have to defend myself because it proves I'm incompetent. Okay. Step 2, design the action. Instead of arguing, I'm going to respond with curiosity. Step 3, predict the outcome. Based on his fear, he predicts, she's just going to unload on me. Then he actually does it. And finally, the most important step, review the results. What really happened? Because what you find time and time again is that the catastrophe you predicted just doesn't happen. And that new data starts to chip away at the old belief. And as John repeats this process, catching the thought, finding the root, testing it with action, something amazing starts to happen. He's not just fixing one problem, he's learning an entirely new set of skills. Because the ultimate goal of CBT is not to keep you in therapy forever. Exactly. The whole point is empowerment. It is to equip you with the tools to become your own therapist, so that when life inevitably throws more challenges your way, you have a solid framework to handle them yourself. So, John doesn't walk out of therapy magically cured. He walks out with a toolkit. He now knows how to spot his personal thinking traps. He knows how to treat his strongest beliefs like hypotheses, not facts. He understands the powerful link between thoughts, feelings, and actions. He has a plan. He has agency over his own mind. And really, this whole process isn't just for a formal therapy setting. It's an incredibly powerful skill for any of us to learn. Which kind of leaves us with a final question to think about. What's one automatic story you tell yourself all the time about your work, your relationships, maybe yourself, that you've always treated as a fact when maybe, just maybe, it's a hypothesis that's just waiting for a new experiment?